Hello, Archie Dunlop here with Talking Astrology with Archie on Monday, August the 12th, 2024. There are a couple of things I want to talk about today. So there was a plane crash in Brazil. I think it was on August the 9th, which would have been, last Friday? And I don't know, 60-something people were killed. And I thought it might be a good idea to look at this plane crash. I understand that Brazil is a big country and that disasters do happen in a big country on a relatively regular basis. But still, I think that it's something that has been a bit of a shock to Brazil. And I was just wondering if this accident showed up, for example, in terms of Brazil's national horoscope, and that is something I want to look at, not just because of the plane crash, just to sort of consider what does one take as the beginning of Brazil. For example, Brazil's independence from Portugal in 1822. Well, you might say, oh, well, it's when Brazil became a republic, I think in 1889. I think it had an emperor, didn't it, or something? I don't know a great deal about Brazil, but there are a couple of charts that we might want to look at. And, if these charts work, you'd expect big events to show up in them. I suppose from an optimistic point of view, the biggest event in Brazil's history, at least from an outsider's perspective, might be Brazil winning the World Cup in 1970. Maybe it doesn't really matter winning a World Cup. It's nice to win the World Cup, but Brazilians supposedly take their football seriously. Another thing I want to look at is the recent Ukrainian incursion into Russia, into Russia's old border, that crossed Russia's old borders, and it's in the Kursk region. I know I've mispronounced Kursk. I think that it's more of a Kursk or something, isn't it? But I'm not going to try to pretend that I can pronounce Russian accurately. I failed Russian O-level when I was at school. I failed it really badly, but I do want to look at this incursion, and I want to compare it with previous incursions in previous eras. I want to compare it with the Battle of the Bulge. The Battle of the Bulge, remember, was Nazi Germany's final throw of the dice on the Western Front in sort of 1944, when the Germans attacked the American positions in eastern France and in the Ardennes, and the situation was pretty hopeless by then. But still, they got a long way. I mean, their aim was to reach Antwerp. And there are actually, astrologically, a few parallels between the beginning of the Battle of the Bulge, when the Nazis stormed forward in eastern France, and this latest Ukrainian incursion when they went through into Russia across its traditional borders. But before I talk about that, I want to look at the astrology and the I Ching for today, which is Monday, August the 12th, 2024. Now, just a reminder, if you like this video, I would be very grateful if you were to indicate that you liked it. I really would appreciate that. And also, if you're not subscribed and you like this video, I would be really happy if you were to subscribe to this video. It really doesn't cost you anything, but it does make a big difference to this channel. Okay, so let's turn to the situation today. So here is the position of the planets. So, by the way, there's a Brazilian flag. That's the kind of, I believe that's the kind of aeroplane that crashed. I mean, it's not the aeroplane that crashed, but it's a type of aeroplane that crashed, and that, I think, is part of a advertising poster, I think, for the Battle of the Bulge. Remember that film that came out I think it was 1965, Battle of the Bulge. And that was a big film, a long time ago now. God, nearly 50, nearly 60 years ago that Battle of the Bulge came out. But anyway, we're going to talk about the Battle of the Bulge a bit later in this video. So in terms of what is happening today, Moon is still in Scorpio. Moon is very much in Scorpio. It doesn't matter where you are. It's a Moon in Scorpio day. And yeah, that means, as usual, with Moon in Scorpio, we're going to have a certain emphasis on the emotional side of things. Feelings are going to be important. How we express our feelings, whether we do express our feelings, whether we don't express our feelings, whether we keep our feelings to ourselves. These kind of issues are going to be important, and we may have a certain tendency to take things a little bit seriously. And this Moon in Scorpio makes a trine to Saturn in Pisces. So Moon in Scorpio trine Saturn in Pisces. I think that by and large that's pretty fortunate. It perhaps allows us to structure our feelings, to make sure our feelings don't get out of control. But I suppose it might be a little bit controlling because it is Saturn. It is Saturn. Saturn likes to be in control. So maybe we're going to be good at controlling our feelings. Maybe we're going to be too good at controlling our feelings. Perhaps there are some things which need to be expressed. The Moon also makes a square to the Sun. So you've got Moon in Scorpio, trine Sun in Leo. So Moon in a fixed sign, Sun in a fixed sign. That is somewhat stubborn, focusing on particular things and not wanting to be distracted, you could say. And it may be hard work keeping that level of focus, and there may be a sense that it all just becomes a bit too much. You know, we need some space, but Moon square Sun doesn't necessarily provide us with any space. And the intensity of the day is perhaps further emphasized by the fact that Mars is sesquiquadrate Pluto, sesquiquadrate 135 degrees. That is 3/8 of the circle. So if you've got a cake, you cut it into 8 equal slices. A sesquiquadrate represents 3 of those slices. And it's a dynamic aspect. And so with Mars sesquiquadrate Pluto, there are issues of power and control. And we might think that we can't assert ourselves. Pluto is it's all a bit too heavy. Or we might think that we have to assert ourselves. It's either us or them. If I don't assert myself, someone else is going to assert themselves. And the power dynamic, I think, is going to be very important to us. Okay, if it's not important to us, it's going to be important to someone else. Turning to the heliocentric position, remember that is looking at things from a perspective of the Sun in the centre of the solar system, because astrologers tend to use a geocentric system. So that's the heliocentric view. And what you see here is a grand trine in air signs. I mean, in air signs from a heliocentric perspective, I'm not even convinced that one should necessarily worry about the meanings of the air signs and the meanings of the signs in general when you're looking at a heliocentric chart. But in terms of just getting an idea of where things are, it's perhaps useful to see this as a grand trine in air. And because it's a heliocentric position, we can get the kind of aspects that we never see geocentrically. So we've got Mercury trine Venus. Now, in a geocentric chart, it is impossible to get Mercury trine Venus, but in a heliocentric chart, yes, that is something you can get. And so we have got Mercury trine Venus, we've got Venus trine Jupiter. So we've got quite a nice grand trine there. And when I looked at the positions of the planets, over the course of a week. I do this video where I look at the week ahead. It's always my video that does really badly, in terms of viewing figures. People are not really interested in what I have to say about the week ahead. Maybe that's because in my week ahead video I don't talk about the 12 signs. Okay, so with this grand trine, it does actually have a certain sense of optimism, as I was saying in my week ahead video. People can be optimistic about the future. Maybe people think that everything is fine. And, I suggested that maybe this is to do with the markets. I mean, the markets have been recovering very nicely from that crash we had just over a week ago on, remember you had that crash just over a week ago when you had the new moon and you had Mercury going retrograde coming together, and that seemed to really disturb the markets. But certainly by the end of the week, things seem to be recovering nicely, and there may be other reasons to be optimistic. Maybe some people are optimistic the fact that Kamala's doing well in the polls. Maybe she's going to beat Trump. If you're of a Democrat progressive angle, that might cheer you up. If you're a big fan of Ukraine, you might be impressed by Ukraine's latest incursion into real proper Russia. Teaching those Russians a lesson, whatever. That may be how you think about it. So there may just be this general optimism here with Venus trine Jupiter, Jupiter trine Pluto, but things are actually working, that things are actually okay. And it actually gives quite a different picture to a geocentric position. A geocentric, it's a little bit heavy. Moon in Scorpio, Moon square Sun in Leo, Mars sesquiquadrate Pluto. But, it is a day when ideas are flowing heliocentrically. People really want to be happy. They want to see the best in things. But, as I have already explained, heliocentrically, Venus and Mercury are really fast movers, particularly Mercury. Mercury goes around the Sun in 88 days, I think. So this grand trine in air signs is not going to last forever. And I'm sort of looking at this week, and I was trying to characterize the week ahead. And remembering we've got Mars conjunct Jupiter, I think, on Wednesday. Then we've got Mars square Saturn on Friday. Then we've got this big new moon, full moon on August the 19th. And I'm sort of thinking that perhaps the theme of the next sort of week is going to be from hope to despair. I think that might be how it works out. There's always hope here, perhaps, in the heliocentric picture. And then maybe that peaks on, midweek when we've got Mars conjunct Jupiter, and then you go Mars square Saturn, then you got the full moon square Uranus, and then just things go pear-shaped all over again. And things that we thought were going okay might actually be going not quite so well. Remembering what I said about the Mars square Saturn, that Mars square Saturn really chews up on Friday, really chews up Kamala Harris's Venus, because she's got Venus in Virgo, and so she's going to have Mars square her Venus, Saturn square her Venus, and Mars and Saturn making a square. And I don't think she's going to be particularly happy about that. So that's something, well, I'm not going to say to look forward to. I suppose it depends on your perspective, doesn't it? Okay, so that's the heliocentric picture, and now I want to look at today from the perspective of the 12 signs. Now, there is not a lot going on this week. There's a lot going on this week, but today I don't think there is so much going on. I would actually say that probably the most important aspect is Mars sesquiquadrate Pluto. It might seem a minor aspect, but from my perspective, that's probably the aspect that really matters. But I'm kind of hoping that I'm going to say less than usual. As I said, my videos have been getting a bit long, and I'm not thinking I have to go on for 10 minutes for each sign. I don't think that's necessary, but we'll see how it goes. Okay, so let me switch back to the geocentric coordinates. There we are. Okay, so these are my forecasts for the 12 signs for today, which is Monday, August the 12th, 2024. Aries. Aries, you are really kind of feeling that something is happening. You're feeling that you want so much more, and you are becoming just really a lot more energetic, I think. I mean, at least on an internal level. I don't actually think you're quite ready to put theory into practice, to put ideas into action. I think you do need to get your timing right. And yes, I understand that Mars, your ruler, is moving towards a conjunction of Jupiter. It's just another degree away, but it's not quite there yet. And yes, Aries, I understand there are lots of things you want to do, but again, I just don't think that now is perhaps quite the right time to do it. But you're going to be pushed. There does seem to be pressure, and that is because Mars is making a sesquiquadrate to Pluto. So Mars is your ruler. It's 135 degrees from Pluto. You can feel the pressure, and you feel that perhaps if you don't do something now, something bad can happen. Or perhaps someone else is going to be able to seize the advantage. And I think, Aries, issues of power and control are going to be very important to you, especially if you are of an extroverted nature. There are introverted Arians. They do exist. Maybe you're an introverted Aries. I mean, I know the textbook Aries is an extrovert, but I'm sure if you were to analyze the situation scientifically, you would find that 50% of Arians are extroverts and 50% of Arians are introverts, assuming the population is made up of half introverts, half extroverts. And indeed, I have met introverted Arians. And maybe I'm an introverted Arian. I've got the moon in Aries. Perhaps at some level I'm an Aries. I am. I can tell you, I've done the tests. I am a complete introvert. But I don't really think I'm an Aries. Maybe I was an Aries as a child with the moon in Aries, but not anymore. And so, Aries, you just do feel this pressure. And you just may feel that you have to do something. Now, if you do have to do something, maybe you do. Maybe that's the way it is. I mean, I don't know exactly what's going on in your life. I don't know exactly what kind of pressure you're under, if you're under any pressure at all. But you just may feel that it can't wait. But still be careful. I think with Mars, Mars is sesquiquadrate Pluto, and the moon is in Scorpio. And that would suggest, Aries, that if you want to be most effective, you will be a little bit subtle. You don't have to be direct. You don't have to be taking initiatives which everyone can see, which are happening in broad daylight. You can do things in a somewhat secretive, underhand way. I mean, underhand is possibly the wrong word, but no, because that suggests that there's something a bit immoral about it. But no, I'm not talking about anything moral there. But you can just do things that people don't notice. And I think that if people don't notice you, then that's a good thing. Do people have to notice you? The moon is in Scorpio. And this is a time when perhaps you need to go into submarine mode. Just doing things in your own way, just without advertising the fact. And that is how you can, I think, maximize your power. Yet, I must say, we cannot get away from the fact that the Mars is conjunct Jupiter. And I think that there are going to be times when you're able to speak with incredible power. You do have something to say. I'm very convinced about it. And there's something you can say, not just to people close to you, but just to the world at large. You've got a message, you've got something you really want to express with all your power and all your enthusiasm. And it just may be that now, today, is actually the right time for doing it. But words do not necessarily mean action. And I just think that right now is not really the time for taking large-scale actions. Tomorrow's different. Tomorrow, moon is in Sagittarius, and we can review the situation when I look at your sign. When I look at your sign tomorrow. But for today, try to be a little circumspect. It doesn't necessarily have to be done today. Maybe it can be done tomorrow or even the day after. Taurus, you are quite perhaps concerned about the impact that other people might be having on you. You understand that you are not alone, that you can't do things when you are alone, that you always need a certain amount of support. I mean, not necessarily a total amount of support, but just a bit of support may be required along the way. And so it's just going to be important that you talk to people, you try to understand their viewpoint. And it doesn't mean to say that you have to take people as they are. I think that with Moon in Scorpio, trine Saturn in Pisces, you are able to have a restraining influence which possibly could be quite useful. So perhaps if you're not comfortable with what someone is doing or with what someone is planning, you can gently have an influence. You can sort of gently moderate their behavior, and in the process you can sort of calm things down. In fact, I think in some respects, Taurus, you are a calming influence. It's but it's not a day for excitement, and you want to do things at your own pace. I mean, that's not to say it's not going to be a constructive day. I actually think it could be a very constructive day, but it's going to be constructive ideally not in a dramatic way. You do the things you're good at. You may or may not get some support from other people. I think support actually is available if you want it, but I don't think support is absolutely essential. And in fact, I suppose a little bit of caution might be required with certain people, because right now, today, certain people are very concerned about power. You might not be concerned about power, but other people are. Who has control? Who can be in control? Who should be in control? And that just might be something that you're thinking about a great deal, or at least other people are thinking about it. And it may be the case, Taurus, that there may be some people who really should be avoided because they won't necessarily take you seriously. They'll be so into themselves that they won't be considering anything else, and it all could turn out to be pretty unfortunate. Now, in terms of your brain and the way your mind is working, you're kind of moving in sort of two different directions here. You're, on one hand, you can see real possibilities. There's this real optimism about the way things could turn out. And at the same time, you're feeling an incredible pessimism. So it's like optimism and pessimism, for many Taurians, are having a complete battle. you can see how things could get really bad. But you could also see how things could be really good. And how do you deal with this contradiction? I think you deal with the contradiction, Taurus, by just being completely realistic about the situation. Yes, there are for sure some very big opportunities that you're already picking up on. And at the same time, though, there are some pretty big challenges, and there's a lot of reasons to be at least realistic. And even a bit of negativity might be a good thing, provided it doesn't get out of control. So you can see ways in which things could be a whole lot better, but you can also see all the things that could stop things being a whole lot better. And it's good that you're thinking about it, because if you're thinking about it, Taurus, then you're thinking about solutions to the problem. And so I would have said, in some respects, keep thinking, keep battling with optimism and pessimism, keep battling with all the reasons why something can't happen, all the reasons why it can happen. And perhaps, Taurus, what you have to just do is find a way through. And yet, in fact, I think you will find a way through. Just be persistent, but at the same time, don't be too persistent, because if you're too persistent in terms of pursuing a single goal, you just might not have the flexibility to get round things. So a bit of flexibility does matter. Now, I understand that the moon is in a fixed sign. Moon is in Scorpio. Sun is in a fixed sign. That can encourage you to just be too much of a dead weight. We don't want that. We need you to demonstrate a little bit of flexibility, which is absolutely possible because Venus, your ruler, is in Virgo. You can do it. You just need to look at the different ways in which things can work. And so that way you can avoid the problems and start moving towards the opportunities. And so in the end, your positivity combined with a good dose of realism can see you through. Gemini. At the moment, many Geminis are feeling a bit detached. You can see how things are. You can see that some things are good, some things are not so good, but you certainly don't want to be emotionally involved in it all. And I think it's a situation where your realism and your ability to see things as they are is quite strong, and you're able to sort of disengage your emotions, and that's quite a feat with Moon and Scorpio, but that is something that Geminis can do. And I'm speaking as a Gemini. I mean, I've got my Sun and my Mercury in Gemini, but there is something a little bit schizoid about Geminis. Geminis can separate the mind from the body, the mind from the heart. They can do that, and that's perhaps what you can do at the moment. Yeah, you're not unemotional. All of us are emotional. I mean, particularly now with the Moon in Scorpio, but somehow you can create a certain amount of distance, and that is, I believe, going to be quite useful. Though certain people might regard you as being a little too detached, but we live in complicated times, and sometimes detachment can be very useful, can be extremely useful. And you can see what things have to be what things have to be done. And actually, Gemini, I think that today you're going to have a surprising sense of discipline. You are going to be able to control yourself. You may even be able to an extent, discipline your mind. I mean, it's always difficult with Geminis to discipline their mind, to stop their mind in their tracks. That can be difficult. But I think you can do it. And I think that you can also set a good example by being disciplined and focused yourself. Then other people can pick up on this, and they can follow your lead. And if you clearly tell people what to do, you give people calm advice, I think that they'll take you seriously. And it's a good way to start the week. Indeed, the working week, it's a good way to start. The moon is trine Saturn. I just think that gives you an ability to make sure that things don't go out of hand. I don't think it's going to be exciting, but that shouldn't bother you. You can see that maybe excitement is round the next corner. Perhaps, I suppose Mars is making a conjunction to Jupiter in Gemini, which is your sign, but there are other things to consider, and I think one of the things to consider is the fact that today Moon is trine Saturn, and that sort of makes things a little more restrained. And I do think actually that is a good thing. Cancer. You're in a state of mind where you feel that things are working, things are happening. They may not be happening in an especially dramatic way, but I think most Cancerians are feeling relatively comfortable. And most importantly, Cancer, you are in control. You're in control of what you are doing, what you want to do. I think there are things you want to do today, things that are special to you, things that matter in terms of your happiness and your sense of accomplishment, and you're feeling okay about that. And it's not going to, that these kind of things, it's not going to get out of control, and you're going to be quite focused on what matters. And I think that you can almost create meaning without having to try. There is a sense of meaning. It's not necessarily the case that you feel a sense of spiritual awe about what you're doing, but whatever you're doing in your own way, it's right for you, and it's right in terms of building your future and sort of creating a stable future for yourself. Now, I'm not saying that today is going to be entirely uncomplicated. The moon is making a square to the sun, and this square to the sun, you've got moon in Scorpio and moon in Leo, and of course in the Cancer chart the moon is very important, something we always have to consider, and the moon is square the sun, and it just may feel that something is holding you up, and you just can't quite do everything you want to do. And perhaps what is holding you up is issues relating to money. I think that money over the last couple of weeks has been on and off quite important, and you perhaps feel that money or lack of money can stop you doing what you want to do. And that may be a certain feeling today, that there is something you want to do, but financial issues are kind of holding you up. And I'm not going to tell you that, money doesn't matter, or the important things in life don't require any expenditure. Maybe money does matter. Maybe it is true that you're finding that there are certain things you'd like to do that you can't do, and that there's a financial constraint. So I would perhaps urge you to look at the problem and try to be constructive about it, because I'm fairly confident there is actually a way around it. And the way around it is perhaps to use your feelings to begin with, and perhaps even be able to communicate the way you feel, and someone might pick up on that, and you may be able to get a break. Maybe you'll be able to get something cheaper, for example. Maybe you can evoke someone else's sympathy and compassion, depends on the situation. And at the same time, the moon is making a trine to Saturn, and with this moon trine Saturn, I think that today your people skills should be quite good. I think that the important relationships in your life should yield the full results, and if someone really matters to you, I think by and large they can be trusted. And also with this moon trine Saturn, going back to what I was saying, that you may feel that you're being held back perhaps by money. I think that I just think that your ability to get on with people, to communicate with people at the moment, it's good. It's understated. It may not be dramatic, but it's certainly very real. But your ability to get on with people is going to help you there. So maybe you're going to find a way of dealing with a financial barrier, or just a barrier relating to your resources, just feeling that your resources aren't good enough, you don't have what it takes to achieve what you want to. But I think that through thinking and talking and expressing your true feelings, there is a way around this. Leo, you obviously continue to be well placed as the sun moves into the last decan of Leo. The sun is still in Leo, but the sun has, the sun at noon on New York time is at 20 degrees 26 Leo. So in astrology, you can divide each sign up into decans, 10 degrees. So you've got the 10 degrees at the beginning of the sign, you've got 10 degrees in the middle of the sign, and you've got 10 degrees at the end of a sign. And so you've moved out from one decan into another with the sun at 20 degrees Leo. So what this means for Leo, you have been that middle decan of Leo, using the system described by William Lilly. I think this comes from Ptolemy as well. There may be other systems of describing the decans, but using the table that William Lilly produced in his book Christian Astrology, the middle decan of Leo is ruled by Jupiter, and the last decan of Leo is ruled by, make sure I've got this absolutely right, is ruled by Mars. So you move perhaps more from a sort of a Jupiter way of being to being more of a Mars way of being. So perhaps over the last 10 days, Leo, you've been trying to be optimistic. You've been perhaps a little bit moralistic as well in your own way. And you've been trying to work out what rules are best and what rules are not so good, and where you stand on the matter. And now, as the sun moves into the last decan of Leo, ruled by Mars, and so that does indicate a higher level of assertion. At least you may feel pressure to be assertive, and I suppose also you may be a little bit defensive here. So Sun in Leo strongly placed, but also perhaps realizing that there are certain things that could undermine you, and that's what perhaps you're trying to address. You're seeing that the world is, it's not just complicated, but it's a world where not everyone is your friend. And so your defense systems are starting to go up. And This comes at a time when Mars is sesquiquadrate Pluto, and so Mars sesquiquadrate Pluto. Pluto is in Aquarius. Pluto is in your opposite sign. I think, Leo, it's a time when you're going to be very aware of the other and how much control the other has on you. And you may feel that you actually have to take steps to, in some ways, protect your boundaries. People might be encroaching on your boundaries, or at least it might feel that that's the case. I'm not necessarily saying it is the case. I'm just saying it could be the case. And under those circumstances, Leo, it just might feel that your best option is to play it safe, to do things and be places where you just completely know the rules, where you completely understand what's happening, and there's perhaps no need to take risks. And with the moon making a trine to Saturn, in water signs, water signs for a Leo, they are quite serious. You moon in Scorpio trine. Moon in Scorpio trine Saturn in Pisces, your feelings are strong, and if there are any threats, I think that you're going to be pretty much aware of it straight away. And that might be one approach, just to essentially take a defensive posture, but you don't want to take things too far. And in particular, Leo, you don't want to give yourself the impression that you're at a disadvantage, because you're not at a disadvantage, really. The sun is, the sun's in Leo, the sun's in its own sign. It may be 2/3 of the way through Leo, but it's still got a third of the way, it's still got, 10 days left before the sun goes into Virgo. So don't be over defensive. Don't be so defensive that you are restricting your own opportunities, because there are things happening, and you've got a real strength. And at the same time, Leo, you can have a powerful impact on everyone that comes into contact with you. And even if to begin with it might seem that the other person is more powerful than you, I do think that you can kind of change the situation round, and you can assert yourself, and perhaps you'll get some emotional insights about another person's weakness, and perhaps you can use those insights as a way to really be able to take control. Virgo, it's probably not a particularly exciting day, and that might be a good thing. You do seem right now to be a little bit detached. You don't really want to be in the center of things. You don't see the point, and perhaps you don't feel that you've got the energy. And Mercury, your ruler, it's going retrograde now. It's gathering pace as it moves retrograde. It's soon going to be out of Virgo, out into Leo, and perhaps you're starting to feel that. And you're just asking yourself, what is the point? And at the same time, you are very aware of many of the things that could be holding you back, that are limiting you. Short term, as far as you're concerned, you regard these limitations as being very real, and as far as you're concerned, well, you might as well just work with them. You don't want to attempt the impossible. If something's in your way, it's in your way, and there's probably not much you can do about it. At least that seems to be the way you're thinking. That doesn't mean to say that you can't discuss what's on your mind, tell people about what's bothering you. And I think that you will find people who will listen to you or try to understand you, and who at the same time will give you some feedback. I think feedback is important, and perhaps you will discover as you're talking to another person that maybe you've got the wrong impression, that things aren't quite as bad as they seem, and that some of your negativity doesn't really have any real grounding. And it just may be how you decide to look at the world. Mercury is your ruler, for example. We can say, oh, Mercury is going retrograde. On the other hand, if we look at things from a heliocentric point of view, if you were listening to my general introduction about what's going on astrologically, you remember that I was mentioning that Mercury is part of a grand trine. Mercury is heliocentrically, remember, this is putting the sun in the center of the solar system. Mercury is making trines to Venus and Jupiter. Mercury-Venus trines can't happen geocentrically, but they can happen heliocentrically. And so with Mercury trining Jupiter and Saturn, you kind of, I think, need to perhaps move beyond the supposed negativity and restrictions of your immediate environment. It might just seem that there's not much you can do, but start to look at things from a heliocentric view. When you look at things from a heliocentric view, you are moving beyond who you are and perhaps your own prejudices, your own preconceived notions. You move beyond this. You start to look at things from a more sort of cosmic kind of way. When you start to put the sun in the center of the solar system, and you realize that Mercury is really well placed. So get your information not from your friends and your family or your own unconscious mind. Get your information and get your perspective from a global cosmic sense, try to reach out to something wider from yourself, wider from your immediate environment, your community. Go beyond that, Virgo. If you can do that, you'll start to see something else going on, something much larger, much more positive. And if you can start to pick up on the energy of that grand trine between Mercury and Venus and Jupiter, and okay, these are fast-moving planets, but I think that tomorrow as well, Mercury, I think, will still be trine Venus and Jupiter. It's still be breaking up. It's starting to break up a bit, but in the early week. But this beginning of the week, I think that's what you need to focus on. The real positive picture is out there for you to discover, Virgo. It really is. Libra. I was just talking to Virgo, and I was telling Virgo that there is a distinction between the geocentric way of looking at the solar system and the heliocentric way. And I think that this can be important in terms of, understanding what is possible and how one should be looking at the world. And I think this distinction is also actually important for you. And I think, Libra, that if you look at things just how they are on the surface, Libra, you might just feel that just things aren't really happening. It just might feel that now is not quite the right time, that you can't really take the risk of making yourself known, making yourself heard, that really you're wondering, is there a point? And particularly now, because, things are complicated, and, you try to be optimistic, and you try to think about what could happen, what might happen if everything went in your favour. But then on the other hand, you can just see the negatives. For every opportunity, there's just a reason why this opportunity is not going to work. And so there is just some danger, Libra, that you get yourself into a state of mind where you just don't think there's any reason why you should be doing anything dramatic, that if you have any hopes, that they might sort of come to nothing. Now, there are reasons why that approach is kind of optional. You don't have to be like that. You don't have to think like that. Because if you actually look at the heliocentric picture, this is when you make the sun the center of the solar system, where in fact it is. You see that Venus, which is your ruler, is making a trine to Jupiter. And that Venus trine Jupiter is really very optimistic. It's true Venus, not from the biased perspective of the Earth, where we stand, looking at the solar system from the Earth's view with that human terrestrial bias. But when you actually look at the solar system from its center, then you see the real picture. You see that in spite of everything, there are complete possibilities here. There is at least one thing which you really should be going for, because it's your chance. It's a real chance to make an impact, and once you hit the right note, really there'll be nothing to stop you. Obviously you've got to make the effort, a little bit of effort, but when you recognize the cosmos, that the cosmos is giving you a chance, then the cosmos is going to smile on you, and you will find that things do start to move. And yes, it can be quite a lucky day, but you've got to be open to that luck, and you've got to perhaps change the way you perceive of things. And in another sense, your thought processes could go in two different directions. Your thought processes could go in a direction of just thinking about all the reasons why something can't happen, and then thinking about all the reasons why it can happen. And sure, you've got to be down to earth. There are always going to be restrictions, but you just don't want to exaggerate these restrictions, because it does seem, Libra, that if you absolutely are ready to take the right approach, then I do really think that things can move. And it might also be about choosing your company carefully. Mars is making a conjunction to Jupiter. Sure, that Mars conjunct Jupiter isn't exact until Wednesday, but it's very real, and its influence is being felt. And Mars has a relationship to other people, at least in the Libran horoscope. So with Mars making a conjunction to Jupiter, then I do believe that there are certain people who I think that you can really benefit from. They are optimistic. You need to hang around with optimistic people today. The environment, the backdrop is just so important, Libra. So you have choices here, and I know that one often thinks of astrology as being about destiny, and to an extent I do think that astrology is about destiny, but it's also about knowing what the possibilities are. And I think in this case today, I think it is a day when you do have choices, and you perhaps need to look beyond surface appearances, look beyond what seems to be humdrum, boring, restrictive, and go beyond it. And if you can do that, Libra, then I think the sky's the limit, and I think you can also, as I said, just benefit from other people. I think there's no reason why relationships can't work for you. Again, it's all about choice. It depends. You've got to choose who you're with. If you hang out with people who have a depressive view of the world, then sure, you might feel a bit depressed yourself. Again, when I talk about depression, I'm not talking about this in a clinical sense, just in a general layman's terms. And on the other hand, if you hang around with enthusiastic, optimistic people, then you're going to feel enthusiastic and optimistic yourself, and you're going to see all the possibilities that are available. So I would finish this piece, Libra, by just simply saying, well, really, it's up to you. Scorpio. The moon continues its path through your sign. In a way, it's always nice when the moon is in Scorpio, if you're a Scorpio. And I actually think it is useful having a moon in Scorpio. Not everyone appreciates the moon being in Scorpio, but for you, I think that it has some advantages. It's not just that you are sort of emotionally in tune with whatever is going on around you. It's not just that your emotions are appreciated. It's also that you are very focused, and Scorpios enjoy being focused. It's important to be focused if you're a Scorpio. And once you've found the right thing to be focused on, well, really, Scorpio, there is nothing to stop you. And, today we've got Moon square Sun. Moon is exactly square Sun. Moon in Scorpio, square Sun in Leo. I do not regard this square as being a bad aspect for you. I think other people might have problems with this square, but I don't think you as a Scorpio are going to have problems with this square between the moon and the sun. I think that this moon square Sun is actually going to be very motivating. You're going to know what's important. You're not going to waste your time on things that are irrelevant. Okay, some people might be upset that you are so focused. They want your attention. They want you to spend time with them. They want you to waste time with them. But that's not, I don't think, something you're going to do. You're going to understand what matters, and you're going to understand what is completely trivial, what can be put off until tomorrow, or perhaps be put off forever. And so do tune into that, and just also understand that right now I think that you are someone who is quite disciplined, but disciplined not in a boring way. I think you're disciplined in the sense that you can take everything you are, you can take the sum total of your creative genius, and you can focus it, and you can if you've got areas that you feel you're not good enough at, that you feel that could be better, you'll know what to do. You'll know how to make some improvements. But I think there are improvements at the edges. I think that by and large you've got it all sorted out, and then there's no I don't think there's going to be any stopping you. And matters are made even better by the fact that Mars is sesquiquadrate Pluto. Could be a difficult aspect, Mars sesquiquadrate Pluto, but it's a powerful aspect. Mars, and Mars is doing all sorts of things. Mars, your ruler, it's conjunct Jupiter, moving towards a conjunction of Jupiter. That gives you power, that gives you energy, and Mars is sesquiquadrate Pluto. So yeah, there could be something a little bit obsessive about that Mars sesquiquadrate Pluto, and you have to get the balance right. You don't want to be obsessed about things that shouldn't be obsessed about, but you need to be obsessed about your own power and what you want to achieve, and you shouldn't be in the mood, as I said, for wasting time, letting other people waste your time. So I think that you are going to be very persistent today, and I think that it doesn't matter what other people think, really. You can just go and do it, and at the same time, if there's something that needs to be said, you will know how to say it. I think that ability to communicate powerfully, simply, in a way that's powerful and simple, is extremely good. And the world will take notice of you. You're not really someone to be ignored. Sagittarius. I think, Sagittarius, that recently you've had a rather somewhat negative view of the world. I think it's still there, but things are changing, Sagittarius. You're just feeling that you're becoming more energized. It's a slow process, and I'm not saying that today is the day when you need to really step out, make things happen, announce your presence. Not necessarily, but perhaps tomorrow. Today the moon is in Scorpio. Tomorrow the moon will be in Sagittarius, will be in your sign. So maybe that is the time tomorrow when you can step out into the sunshine and announce your presence, and people will have to take you seriously. I think today, I don't think there's any real obligation in that department, but you can feel the change. It is. Mars is moving towards a conjunction of Jupiter. That is important. Jupiter represents you. Mars represents the energy that is all around you, and you can become part of that energy. And also, you're able to tell people what's on their mind. You're able to tell people what is on your mind. You're not going to mince your words. At least once you get started. I think to begin with, you might feel, Sagittarius, that you don't want to say anything because you don't know what the response is. You perhaps want to keep things to yourself. That might be best. But once you actually get it together to tell everyone what's on your mind, that's different. Things change. And as soon as you start to notice that people are taking you seriously, that's going to give you encouragement, and you'll be able to say more and more. And I think, Sagittarius, that you're going to be able to communicate, I would have said, with real power. And I think you will be taken seriously. So it's a day when you really can have an influence, if you want to have an influence. But you may want to wait until tomorrow. You may feel that things aren't completely in the right place, and so it's best to just maybe just be a perfectionist, wait till everything is sorted out. But you don't want to be too much of a perfectionist. It may be that you reach a stage where you feel like today, okay, it's not 100%, but it's good enough, and it is a time when you can start kind of wheeling yourself out, telling people what's on your mind, starting to create action. And with this action, I think will come real progress. And so I think that it's not going to go away. Mars is getting closer to the conjunction of your Jupiter. Okay, it's not exact today, but I think the conjunction between Mars and Jupiter is exact on Wednesday. So that is a time to really start to make things happen, and also to make things happen with other people. And that's something you should consider today. How are you going to harness other people? How are you going to get their cooperation? Whose help do you need? What kind of alliances do you want to make? Who are the people you want to be with right now and over the next few days? Perhaps you need to start to work that out now, so that you're properly prepared. When that Mars-Jupiter conjunction becomes exact. I think it's on Wednesday off the top of my head. So overall, Sagittarius, I think that, okay, it may be a day of preparation, but it may also be a day when you feel that you've done enough preparation and that now really is the time to move forward with things. Capricorn, you are someone who can be trusted. I think there's no doubt about that. And I think this trustworthiness will just be apparent to everyone. You're someone who knows what they're talking about. You're also someone who is not going to change their plans at the last moment. You have, I think, perhaps a track record of trustworthiness and reliability. And I think that everyone is going to appreciate that. And it probably works both ways. There are people you need to trust. You don't have to trust everyone, but there are just a couple of people who you can trust and you should trust. And you don't trust them as an act of faith. No, you trust them on the basis of their track record, of what they've done in the past. That's how it works, isn't it? People don't just suddenly change their behavior. If someone has treated you well in the past, they're going to treat you well in the future. And likewise, if they treated you badly in the past, you can expect the same in the future. So if someone has been responsible in the past, that's the kind of person you need to relate to and you need to spend your time with. And do consider the possibility that new people might be coming into your life for whatever reason. People, maybe there are people you don't really know very well. Maybe you've never met them before. That there is a sort of an easy communication, and that easy communication can become stronger. And it may turn into something else, into something that is actually, a lot more positive. And so it is a time when you and other people can come together. But again, it's not in an undisciplined way, not in a chaotic way. There is a certain sense of planning, and there is a certain sense in which you are using your judgment. But I think your judgment in terms of other people is actually very good. And I think, as I've already said, I think that you're going to get a high amount of respect today. You will come over today, Capricorn, as someone who must be respected, who should be respected, who knows things that other people don't, and that just has clear authority. And it's a kind of authority that you don't have to show off about, you don't have to boast about. Your authority doesn't have to be explained. It's just going to be obvious in the way you express yourself, in the way you are, just in the way you hold yourself. Now, I am not going to say that everything is fine, because one thing I do notice, and I think you're the only person I'm telling you this. I mean, I don't think I've mentioned it for the other signs. I haven't mentioned it for the other signs. That today there is an inexact conjunction between Black Moon Lilith and the South Node. And this conjunction takes place in Libra. And, Libra is a high-profile sign in the Capricorn chart. And this might be what you become aware of. And I think that Capricorns may be aware that there is something going on. I don't think it's going on in your life, in your immediate life, but in something you're engaged with. It could be at work or just maybe in your community. And you can see that it's no good, that it's rotten, that it's there's a certain stink to it. It may be about unethical behavior, just people doing bad stuff. You maybe can't entirely put your finger on it, but it just feels wrong, and you can't stop thinking about it. And the question is, how do you respond to the situation? Now, it may be that at some level you are connected to it and you do have to respond to the situation. In other words, if you allow something to stagnate, then it could start to fester. And in the end, it could damage you. It could even damage you in a reputational sense. I mean, it probably won't, but that is, in an extreme case, it could, because the South Node is connected with reputation, and in particular bad reputation. So if you see that something is wrong, then, and I think you could, then you have to absolutely decide what you want to do about it. Now, you could decide that there's nothing you can do, and you're going to back off, and you're going to make sure you're unconnected with it. It's kind of self-protection. Or you may take the view that it's important and that you need to do something about it, and you need to say something about it. It's kind of a situation you've seen before, but you've now seen it again, and you know what needs to be done. And so in that case, if something's wrong, you're in a position to put it right. And once you start making a fuss, people are going to listen to you. Because, as I've said already, you are an authoritative person. Your authority is quite clear, it's obvious. And so, people are going to listen to you. And if you're concerned about something, then everyone else is also going to be concerned about it. Aquarius. Like Capricorn, you are in a position today when people are going to be, I think, taking you pretty seriously. This is this overlap between Capricorn and Aquarius. They have the same ruling planet, so that means that what's true for Capricorn is often true to Aquarius, but there are, of course, huge differences between Capricorn and Aquarius. I don't want to make you feel that you have to share Capricorn's forecast. Now, you don't have to share it if you don't want to share it, but I just want to make it clear that you are right now in a position where people are going to take you seriously. You do have a certain amount of authority which just can't be ignored. It's just a very natural authority, and you just carry it with you, and it could take many manifestations. I think it could have a special connection with money, maybe, that it will seem that when it comes to financial matters, you may give the appearance of knowing what you're doing. Now, of course, that might not be true. I mean, just because people trust you with money doesn't mean that you're trustworthy with money. And so don't make assumptions about yourself when it comes to money. There may be work to do with money, and of course, it's always bad giving financial advice unless you really know what you're doing. Giving financial advice, particularly to sort of friends and family, you might be confident about it, but that can often go wrong. But still, there may be a situation, Aquarius, where you can give good financial advice, provided you don't take things too far. And I think you're helped by the fact that the moon is trine Saturn. I think that trine between the moon and Saturn does add to your authority. It does just make you, it gives you the impression of being someone who, is something of a leader, who has made the effort to understand what makes the world tick and sort of where the levers of power lie. And that is something to be welcomed. Now, I think in most cases, your authority is going to be accepted, but maybe not in all cases. And that is because there is a square aspect between the moon and the sun. So moon making a square to sun, that suggests to me that there could be a clash of some kind. Someone out there is very set in their ways, and they don't seem to like what you're doing. They don't seem to like the way you're going about it. Even if the way you're going about it is absolutely correct, they still don't seem to like it. And they may be causing a little bit of trouble. Someone who perhaps seemed easygoing up until very recently, up until today, may develop more of an attitude. And if that is a case, then Aquarius, you perhaps have to work out how best to deal with them, and you have to very much stick to your ground. So if you find that you're being criticized or being questioned, then it may be a situation where you shouldn't engage in an argument. That's not the way to do it. You should just be persistent and say the same message. This is the way it is. This is the way it is. I know what I'm talking about, and not give ground. It might seem a little unsatisfactory, but I think Aquarius, that really is the right way of going about it. And in the end, and if it's kind of like a vote, when you're in a situation where there are lots of people around you, there are going to be people who are going to perhaps not appreciate you, but you will always be able to carry the majority. And because you're always able to carry the majority, that may indicate that today, if you're going to be with people, you should be with people as a group, not one-to-one. Because if you're with people one-to-one, you may actually be weaker than if you're with people as a crowd. Because one person might have sufficient strength to overwhelm you. Just might be the case. But if you're in with 5 or 6 people, then you'll always carry the majority in the end. So that's perhaps something that you need to bear in mind. Pisces. Mars is starting to make a conjunction to Jupiter, and this aspect between Mars and Jupiter is going to be it's getting close now. Mars and Jupiter are now within a degree of each other, preparing for the conjunction, which I think happens on Wednesday. And I do think that this conjunction between Mars and Jupiter is likely to have an impact on you. I think it's going to be very energizing, and you perhaps have to prepare to be energized. So I suppose if you're preparing to be energized, then you have to be preparing to put your energy in the right direction, because I suppose when you're talking about energy, there's always a danger that you put your energy in the wrong direction. You might, for example, put a lot of energy into your family and your home. That is possible. Now, that could be a good thing, but it might become too much of a good thing. You might just be too much for your family, or your home may end up taking up so much of your time and your energy that you haven't got anything left over for anything else. So that is a danger there. Too much focus It's going to be focus which is slightly scattered, but it's always going to be going in that potentially is going to be going in that same direction. It's going to be going down, deep down into your roots, into your home, your family, your domestic life. And is that really what you want? Sure, if there's got something that needs to be done, then go and do it, but don't put in more energy than you have to. And at the same time, Pisces, you perhaps need to make a special effort to look beyond your everyday life. And I think that's something you actually can do today, because the moon is making quite a nice aspect to Saturn. The moon in Scorpio is perhaps challenging you to just to move beyond, to look beyond what's right in front of you, and to consider other possibilities which you perhaps have never considered before. But with the moon making a trine to Saturn, there seems to be an opportunity to really ground these possibilities and to really make them real. And another thing that you should bear in mind, Pisces, is that because Jupiter is your ruler, and it's true that Mars is making a conjunction to Jupiter, but if we look at things from a heliocentric perspective, in other words, if we put the Sun at the center of the solar system, then we see that there is a heliocentric trine between Venus and Jupiter. So Jupiter's your ruler, Jupiter rules Pisces, and Venus is trine Jupiter, and so there's something out there that you can really take advantage of. And that Venus may represent your ability to relate and your ability to just link up with people who are not just on your wavelength, but people who can take you to the next level. People are there not just to make you comfortable. They're also there to move you on. And I think that Venus trine Jupiter can help move you on. When I say move you on, it's just moving you on to a more elevated level where you can see things in a new way. You don't want to see things in an old way, as you could. You could spend too much time, too much attention on your home. And I think that could be a waste, and it could actually be quite destructive if you spend too much time with people that you know too well, and indeed places that you know too well. I don't think that would be helpful. But Pisces, you have a choice, and I think that you need to, if possible, be looking up rather than looking down. Obviously, you can't spend all your time looking up, because you're not going to notice what's in front of you and you could trip up. But just be aware of what is up there, and not just about what is down there. And having this sort of an optimistic, wide-angled view, I think that's the right way of making the most of today. And that's it. Those are my forecasts of the 12 signs, and I now want to look at today from the view of the I Ching. So I asked the question, what is Monday going to be like for those watching the I Ching section of this video? And the first hexagram I got was number 57, which is the gentle. And this hexagram is about the wind, and you've got wind over wind. Each of these trigrams, these three sets of lines, represents wind. So it's kind of real wind, wind over wind. And the wind needs to penetrate through things. It rushes through everything, and what it is really about is looking for the roots of decay, and perhaps even the roots of evil. Whatever is bad needs to be sorted out. And I'm thinking that this may be linked with one aspect we have today is we've got an exact conjunction between the South Node and Black Moon Lilith. And the South Node represents the past. Black Moon Lilith can represent things which are dark, hidden, maybe a little bit evil, unpleasant. And we need to go back and we need to consider it all, and we need to work out where the rot actually is. And that is something for all of us to do. And it does seem that there are things and people hiding in the shadows, and we need to work out who they are and where they are. And the I Ching sort of talks about all the people that might be required to find out where this evil lies. It talks about magicians, priests, exorcists, these kind of people. I mean, obviously we can't, I don't think, employ magicians, priests and exorcists today, but we need to work out where it all lies. We need to really understand it. And so there is a certain sense of quest, sort of asking questions and not taking things at face value, looking beyond surface appearances, and who is behind the mask. And that's often the case, I suppose, when you've got sort of horror films. There's a certain sort of horror film side to this thing. I mean, I don't want to exaggerate, but then right at the end, the mask slips, and we realise where who the real enemy is, and then that is something that we may want to be looking at. Now, that doesn't mean to say it's necessarily about people. It just seems that there is something wrong, and it's not immediately apparent what is wrong, and our job is to find out what it is. And perhaps we need to look into ourselves. Maybe we need to look into our family history. Thinking about people who are long dead, who are long gone, maybe. But things can work their way through over generations. And certainly things perhaps happening in our early childhood. So it's a time for asking questions. If something is not working out, whatever it is, however trivial it is, the solution may not be immediately obvious, and you have to do a bit of thinking, a bit of lateral thinking, to work out what actually is there, what actually has gone wrong. And so that may be the first thing that needs to be done. Then at the same time, when we've made a decision, we see the situation and we understand what needs to be done, and there's a danger that we hesitate. We just don't want to do it. It just might all seem too much, and it just might feel easier just to accept the status quo. We may say, well, it's not great, there are bad people out there, but what can we do about it? But that might be indecision, it might be laziness. I suppose it could be just common sense. I suppose if you're dealing with dangerous people, maybe you just can't confront them. Maybe that's just the way it is. But indecision is not going to help. We have to make a decision one way or the other. Are we just going to put up with it, or are we going to actually confront the problem and move on? And I think that is something that is important. But if we are feeling that we are having to bow down before some higher authority, a higher authority that we don't respect, but perhaps a higher authority that we think is rotten to the core, we're not going to be comfortable with that situation. And I think that we're going to want to fight against it. And whatever we do, it's just important to be decisive. Now, this hexagram, the gentle, does move, and it moves to hexagram 20, which is contemplation. haven't had this hexagram for a very long time. It's quite a straightforward hexagram. You can see 2 lines at the top. It's still. It's not about movement. So it's kind of saying, we understand what's happening. We're ready to make a decision. We're ready to do something perhaps quite dramatic. But contemplation means we stop. The I Ching says the ablution has been made, but not the action. So I suppose the idea that you kind of wash yourself before doing something, or you make the preparations, but you don't actually see it through. You pause. That's not the same as indecision. You pause. You pause on the threshold of taking action, and you look at the situation, you look at the scene, and you prepare yourself. But perhaps don't go all the way. But again, it's not about indecision. It's just about getting yourself in the right frame of mind, contemplating the situation, and really fine-tuning whatever it is that you're in the end going to do. And now I want to look at Brazil. So there was a plane crash in Brazil on August the 9th. Now, every plane crash in which someone dies is a tragedy. Brazil is a very large and important country. Unfortunately, tragedies, I'm sure, happen every day in Brazil. But this plane crash is in the news, or has been in the news. The news cycle sort of moves quickly. But I thought that it would be a good idea to just look at the plane crash. And always you ask this question, could this plane crash perhaps have been prevented with astrology? Of course, the answer is no, because 2020 hindsight, maybe the thing was fated anyway. And here, so let's look at the chart of the plane crash. So this plane crashed quite close to São Paulo, which is in the south of the country, in a town called Vinhedo in southern Brazil. And this is a chart. Now, if you just look at that chart, it's kind of a bit puzzling, isn't it? Because the first thing you see is Venus on the midheaven. Does Venus on the midheaven represent a plane crash? On the surface, no, it doesn't, does it? I mean, that's not how we see Venus. But we have to see Venus on many different levels. When I was talking about war, I was suggesting that the planet Venus might reflect victory, like Mars represents war, but perhaps Venus represents victory, because victory is an essentially female force. But plane crash, I don't quite see that. And so perhaps we have to see Venus as a trigger for something else. It's not the nature of a planet that matters, it's just the trigger. So that's the first point about this chart. Second point about the chart is that Saturn is square the ascendant. So Saturn square the ascendant kind of makes more sense, doesn't it? Plus we've got, we've got a Jupiter-Saturn square forming. This Jupiter-Saturn square becomes exact on the 19th. So Jupiter is reasonably close to the descendant, but Saturn is exactly square the ascendant. So, okay, that is perhaps interesting, but does it really tell us anything? Just having Mercury, Mercury is quite close to the midheaven as well. So if you just look at that chart just like it is, I mean, probably not. So that's why we always have to look at these kind of charts in more detail, and I think it's always a good idea to look at the midpoints and to look at the 90-degree dial, because you have to see what midpoint was Venus actually on What midpoint was it triggering? What midpoint was it actually triggering? And if you look at this chart, I mean, it's perhaps not immediately obvious, but you can see that there is a very, very wide conjunction between Mars and Uranus. It's an incredibly wide conjunction. It's a ridiculously wide conjunction. It's, 16.5 degrees wide. But then you think, well, what about the Mars-Uranus midpoint? Well, the Mars-Uranus midpoint is approximately 5 Gemini. So in other words, Venus is square the Mars-Uranus midpoint. So what you could say is going on here is that in the world, Venus was square the Mars-Uranus midpoint. And as Venus, I think this was a time when the plane left the radar screen. And so Venus on the Mars-Uranus midpoint, and then it's picked up by the midheaven. The midheaven is where it happens. That personalizes the event to this place in Brazil. Let me just look at the 90-degree dial just to show you what I mean. So if we look, if we put here's the pointer, and if we move the pointer onto Venus, you can see Venus is conjunct the midheaven, and there is Mars and Uranus. So this Venus on the Mars-Uranus midpoint is just triggering the midheaven. So that kind of helps understand perhaps the accident and why it happened when it happened, perhaps. I mean, it still doesn't tell us everything. I mean, there are plenty of places which are going to have, as the midheaven moves onto Venus, it will line up with Mars and Uranus. So, so why then? Why still doesn't fully explain why the accident happened when it happened. So let's look at it from a different point of view. Let's look at it from a point of view of the previous lunation. So there was a lunation. Let me see if I've got this lunation. That's the wrong one. Okay, let's go to the plane crash chart. I'm going all over the place here. Okay, so here's the plane crash. So we want to have the lunation, the one before that. So let's okay, so lunation before the event. And so this new moon happened on August the 4th, about 5 days beforehand. So is there any indication here that something bad might be happening here? And I think there actually is. We've got Jupiter on the midheaven. You could say, well, that's nice, isn't it? But then Mars is moving towards a conjunction of Jupiter. But look at the ascendant. The ascendant at the time of that lunation was at 9:49 Virgo. And so Mars was at 9 degrees 57 Virgo. So Mars was exactly square the ascendant. Of course, by definition, when you have a new moon, the part of fortune is conjunct the ascendant. So we can see so as Mars is obviously square the ascendant, Mars is square the part of fortune. But the key point is that Mars is square the ascendant. So that Mars square ascendant maybe just tells us what we need to know, and so that might give us a hint if we're concerned about Brazil, that part of southern Brazil around São Paulo is showing up. So that's one way of looking at it. But then what about Brazil's chart? I mean, it's not... I mean, I know 60-something people were killed, but in terms of Brazil's history, it's not a huge event. But there's still the question is, the possibility that it may show up in Brazil's horoscope. So here, I believe, is Brazil's horoscope. This is when it got independence from Portugal. So this is September the 7th, 1822. And, I just had this question, does his horoscope work? And I don't know much about Brazil, but so what I thought I'd do is I'd take an event in Brazil's history, which I think which should be quite a big event. And so I'm going to take August the 22nd, 1942. So what happened on August the 22nd, 1942 in Brazil's history? Well, what happened on August the 22nd, 1942 is that Brazil declared war on Germany and Italy. It's kind of a surprising piece of trivia. Actually, the Brazilians fought in Italy. They fought battles in Italy. There's a battle where they, I think, defeated the Germans in 1945. That's kind of, you didn't know that about Brazil. It's kind of weird, isn't it? You don't really associate Brazil with the Second World War and being on the ground and fighting Germans, and even Germans. There's even a picture of Germans surrendering to a Brazilian officer, which is in northern Italy. But so let's just compare Brazil's chart with the declaration of war on Germany on the 22nd of August 1942. The anniversary is coming up soon. It's now August the it's August it's August the 12th, so that would make sense. So looking at the declaration of war chart, look at this is quite good. So Brazil, the independence chart, has its sun at 1433 Virgo. So Mars was at 13 Virgo. So Mars was actually applying to a conjunction of Brazil's sun. So I think that kind of works out. Uranus was at 426. So Brazil has a Moon-Jupiter conjunction. I mean, I don't know much about Brazil, but one has sort of stereotypical views of Brazil, but I don't know. Everyone, when one thinks about carnivals and the Rio Carnival, that sounds very Moon-Jupiter conjunction in Gemini. I know that Brazil is a lot more from carnivals, but when you perhaps think of its image, Moon-Jupiter conjunction, that seems to fit to me. And then Uranus was almost making this conjunction to its Moon-Jupiter, its Moon-Jupiter conjunction. So there's perhaps some evidence there that the Brazil chart is working. Oh, and look at Venus. There was a Venus-Pluto conjunction on the day that Brazil declared war on Germany, and it exactly sextile its natal Moon-Jupiter conjunction. In fact, look at Venus. Venus at noon was at 642 Leo, which was almost exactly sextile the moon, and Pluto at the time of the declaration of war was at 603 Leo, and it was exactly sextile Brazil's 1822 Jupiter. So I think we've got evidence here that this chart actually works. Okay, it's a very small piece of evidence, but I haven't looked at other events in Brazil's history. So I think what we can do now is we can just compare the Brazil plane crash with Brazil's horoscope. Again, there's not necessarily any reason why we should see anything, because unfortunately big scheme of things, a plane crash, when you're dealing with a country, is not necessarily a big event. I don't know if it is. You may disagree with me. I mean, it was a bad plane crash. I think a lot of cancer, there were experts in cancer, oncology doctors who were killed. I mean, it was a major tragedy, and people who, could do a lot of good for humanity were killed in this crash. So it was a sort of a double tragedy there. So maybe it wasn't just any sort of plane crash. And if we look at Brazil's chart and we put the plane crash on the outside, is there anything that's being picked up here? I think to some extent, I mean, you could say that Saturn is sort of on the sun, kind of on the Sun-Mercury midpoint. Brazil has the Sun-Mercury conjunction around the 8th house cusp, and so perhaps Saturn being vaguely opposition the Sun-Mercury may be working out, may be having some impact there. And at the same time, we have I don't know. Uranus is actually quite close to to Brazil's Black Moon Lilith. So Brazil's 1822 Black Moon Lilith is at 2652 Scorpio, and Uranus is at 27.2 Scorpio. So maybe there was something happening there, and so that could have had some impact. And also Mercury was sextile its Mars. I mean, it's a sextile at Mars that doesn't entirely fit, but Mercury was sextile Brazil's Uranus and sextile Brazil's, because Mars has Brazil has a Mars Uranus sextile in its chart. So that would mean that the Mars Uranus, this is now making sense. Brazil in 1822, when it got into independence, had a Mercury Mars Uranus sextile. The midpoint of that Mars Uranus sextile is 3 Sagittarius, and so Mercury was square the Mars Uranus midpoint in Brazil's chart when the plane crash happened. And Mars Uranus, we get a double Mars Uranus impact, because when the plane crashed at that time, at the exact time, Venus was square the Mars Uranus midpoint in the sky, and the midheaven was on the Mars Uranus midpoint. So we get a repeated signature by looking at this plane crash in terms of Brazil's 1822 horoscope. Okay, so now I want to turn to Ukraine. So Ukraine has been having its offensive in the Kursk region. It's very difficult to know what's going on. As far as I can understand, the offensive took Russia by surprise. It's a major embarrassment. Territory has been lost. It's not the end of Russia as we know it, though. As I understand, it has been contained. And this is the chart for the Kursk offensive. I went to Wikipedia. It may not be the exact time. So this is a time which they chose to launch this offensive, the Ukrainians. It seems likely that the British were responsible, had a big role in this. They say about the British always like to do these little sneaky things. They've always, the heroic Britons, they come up with sneaky ideas. They've always done that in the war, and it's always successful. And you have all these stories of British commandos in the Second World War, and it's a big part of Britain's national myth about the clever commandos attacking the Nazi-occupied mainland Europe. And so this is perhaps part of a myth, and you do something clever and it works out wonderfully well. But maybe the myth is, I don't know, it's getting a bit tired by now, isn't it? But anyway, the British don't care. Lots of Ukrainians getting killed, and Russians, but who cares? It's not, it doesn't bother Britain, does it? So this is the time of the operation. just after a new moon, militarily, you often see military operations taking place just after a new moon. Well, the time is 8 a.m. given by Wikipedia for when it started. Maybe it wasn't 8 a.m., but starting a project just after the new moon is often a good idea. Astrologically, it's a new beginning. You don't want to do it before the new moon. After a new moon, astrologically, that certainly makes sense. And the moon is making a conjunction to Mercury, so that also kind of is nice because the Mercury is in Virgo, and so Mercury is well placed in Virgo, except for the fact that it's retrograde. I mean, if you start anything with Mercury retrograde, there's always this danger that you kind of have to go back, that you start, but are you able to finish it? And so there could be a bit of a problem there. And also Saturn Saturn is a bit of a problem as well. So yeah, the moon makes a conjunction to Mercury, but I'll look at Mars. If this 8 a.m. time is correct, we've got Mars on the midheaven, which of course perfectly suits the idea of military action. Mars being right there, up on the midheaven. That kind of makes sense. I don't think Mars on the midheaven guarantees victory, though. It just guarantees a success in terms of however the Ukrainians are defining success. I think that one view is that what the Ukrainians were trying to do was to seize a nuclear power plant near Kursk, and again, I haven't pronounced Kursk correctly. I know I haven't, but I'm just going to say it how I think. I think it's pronounced Kursk or something like that, but I'm not going to make the effort there. And you seize a military power plant, and that would be a nuclear power plant. A major embarrassment for Russia. You can do all sorts of things with it. You can trade it, whatever. So the idea is that they have this far-fetched goal. Now, the Battle of the Bulge, people have made comparisons between this attack and the Battle of the Bulge. So the Battle of the Bulge happened in December 1944, when it was the Nazis' final roll of the dice. It was this big offensive into France, into the Ardennes. The Americans and the British had captured eastern France, but the idea was that the Germans were going to roll it back, and they were going to move forward, and they were going to actually get back to Antwerp, which is in Belgium, to go all the way through to Belgium, capture fuel dumps on the way, and completely change the course of the war, and perhaps would force the Allies to negotiate or something like that, which is, of course, perhaps what the Ukrainians were thinking. You make such an embarrassment to the Russians that in the end you force the Russians to negotiate. So I think that there are certainly connections here between this offensive and the Battle of the Bulge. And looking at the chart for the beginning of the Battle of the Bulge, the Battle of the Bulge, like the Ukrainian attack on Kursk, happened just after a new moon. And like the Battle of the Bulge, it happened with the moon making a conjunction to Mercury. But of course the Battle of the Bulge was much worse. Astrologically, Battle of the Bulge, was not great. This is clear evidence that Hitler didn't consult astrologers, because look, the day of the attack, Mercury was retrograde. Of course, Mercury was retrograde when the Ukrainians made their attack attacked Kursk, but Mercury wasn't just retrograde; it was exactly opposition Saturn. So, yes, the Battle of the Bulge, I think, lasted for about 6 weeks. It started in December the 16th. It was going on until I think the end of January 1945. But Mercury opposition Saturn, that's not great. And of course, the Battle of the Bulge did not achieve its targets. The Germans did not get to Antwerp. They didn't get anywhere near Antwerp, and they were stopped pretty quickly. And likewise, the Ukrainian attack is it's been a serious embarrassment, but they're being contained. And yeah, they got, if you take the nuclear power station as being Antwerp, the Ukrainians have got nowhere, they haven't made it. And it was a final roll of the dice. Now, one interesting thing about this Ukrainian attack is that the Ukrainian attack happened with the moon at 3:54 Virgo, and so that means that if you look at the horoscope of Russia, which I've taken Christmas Day 1991, the moon was at 3 Virgo. So this attack happened exactly on Russia's lunar return, assuming you take December the 25th, 1991 as their chart. Now, the lunar return, I suppose I should look at that lunar return. I didn't really get much from it, but here's the lunar return for Russia. 2951 Leo rising, moon. I mean, it's just because it happened a couple of hours before the attack. It's pretty much the same as the attack, except we've got the ascendant is perhaps different. I mean, I don't think it tells us very much. The moon is making a conjunction to Mercury, but I didn't read a great deal into it. But I just thought it was interesting that the attack did happen on the lunar return, and perhaps the Russians should have consulted an astrologer and perhaps saying, "Oh, what's going to happen with the lunar return? Where is it going to happen?" And finally, I suppose I just have one final quick look at Ukraine's chart. Ukraine being the ones that have launched this offensive, and so there's Ukraine's chart, and on the outer wheel is the chart of their offensive. And so with this offensive, it's interesting, by the way, I always noticed that Ukraine was born with Uranus conjunct Black Moon Lilith. I think that sort of says so much about Ukraine, doesn't it, and the way they're conducting this war. They've sort of perhaps unconventional, slightly terroristic attacks seems to be a hallmark of the way Ukraine has worked. There's a lot of assassination has been an important part, having bombs going off in Moscow, assassinating journalists. That philosopher, his daughter was assassinated. That seems to be very much part of Ukraine's modus operandi, with that Uranus conjunct true Black Moon Lilith in its natal chart. But so Ukraine was born with the sun at 0 degrees Virgo, and so it's kind of interesting that they launched this attack with this conjunction between Venus, Moon, and Mercury in early Virgo, which sort of picks up on their sun. So that might explain perhaps some of the timing. Now, just a reminder that Uranus has Mercury at 26.2 Leo and Venus at 28.9 Leo. So we have got Uranus right now is square Mercury. Uranus is square Ukraine's Mercury-Venus conjunction in Leo. And of course, on the 19th, we've got a full moon at 27, 27 Aquarius. And that full moon is really going to hit Ukraine's Mercury-Venus conjunction. And we shouldn't forget that Venus in Ukraine's chart is aspecting the Mars-Saturn midpoint. So it may be, this offensive. I mean, I think this offensive is already being contained as far as I can see, but we're likely to see more developments in Ukraine and perhaps relating to this offensive as we see this full moon. And I don't see that this full moon on August the 19th as being particularly positive for Ukraine, because it's tied up with Mars and Uranus and the Sun. That Mercury gets really hit. I just remember Ukraine does have Mercury on the Sun-Moon midpoint, aspecting the Sun-Moon midpoint. So those are a few thoughts about Ukraine. Okay, that's it. I hope you found this video interesting. If you did find this video interesting, I would be, of course, very grateful if you were to like it. And if you're not subscribed, I would be over the moon if you were to subscribe, because it does really help my channel if I can get more subscriptions. What am I on, 5,450 or something? It seems a long way to 10,000 anyway. And if you want to buy me a coffee, there is a link in the description. So thank you very much for listening, and I will talk to you again tomorrow.